Hello everyone, what is up? You guys read the title correctly. I did almost win a MOX. Today we're going to be going over the deck that I played at this win a MOX tournament. The position you guys can obviously see on your screen, I ended up coming in 5th, which means I lost in the quarterfinals of the top 8. So we'll go ahead and we'll talk about the deck, talk about things like that here in a little bit, but as you guys can see, I have kind of warmed up to the idea of a face cam. You guys are seeing the face cam up in the upper, I guess this is right hand or left hand, yeah, right hand side of your screen, I think. So yeah, this is my face. I don't know if it is what you expected. I'd be kind of interested to know what you were expecting. But yeah, I've kind of warmed up to the idea of a face cam, and with me thinking about starting streaming on Twitch soon, this is also going to be my Twitch setup with the face cam in the upper right hand corner, as well as the social media links, the YouTube link, Twitter link, and Twitch link directly below the face cam, and then there's some black space there where I can, you know, write down maybe like the deck that we're playing, the record, possibly just throw in the entire list of whatever deck I'm playing over on Twitch. So be sure to follow me on all 3 of these. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Subscribe to me. I don't think you can subscribe to me on Twitch yet, but follow me on Twitch. That would be very helpful. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and talk about the deck that I played. As you guys can tell, it is 8-Rack. So 8-Rack is a deck designed to make your opponents discard their cards and just kind of disrupt their plan. So we're playing some discard spells such as Raven's Crime, which you can see here. Just 1 black mana, target player discards a card. It has retrace, so we can discard a land and pay a black to return or to recast Raven's Crime. We're playing things like Inquisition of Kozilek, which is, everyone pretty much knows this card. It's a great spell in Modern. We're playing some copies of Thoughtseize, which allow us to look at our opponent's hand and take whatever we want from it. And then some cards like Wrenchmind, which is 2 mana to make our opponent discard 2 cards unless they discard an artifact card. Most of the time, though, they won't have an artifact card. This only really comes up things like Mishra's Bauble sometimes, but most people just want the additional card anyway, so there's no point in holding the Bauble, you know, to pitch to a Wrenchmind. Things like additional Aether Vials when we're playing against Death and Taxes and Merfolk. People can pitch their additional Aether Vials. And then basically, after we make our opponent discard, you know, all the cards from their hand, then we have some cards like Shrieking Affliction, which is at the beginning of each opponent's upkeep. If that player has 1 or fewer cards in hand, he or she loses 3 life. As well as the Rack, which has some kind of strange wording on it, but basically if your opponent has 3 cards in hand, 3 cards or more in their hand, they will take 0 damage. If they have 2 cards in hand, they will take 1 point of damage in their upkeep. If they have 2 cards in hand, they will take or if they have 1 card in hand, they will take 2 points of damage in their upkeep, and if they have 0 cards in hand, then they will be taking 3 points of damage in their upkeep. So that's where the name 8-Rack comes from, because we're playing 8 copies of Rack-like effects, 4 copies of the Rack, 4 copies of Shrieking Affliction. And then to kind of like go along with these cards, we're playing a little bit of removal to kind of get our opponents stuff that sometimes they manage to play a big 2-drop that's kind of important before we can actually take it out of their hand. So that's why we're playing things like Fatal Push, which I played a 1 of in this tournament. This was, as you guys can tell, it was from October, so this is a few months ago. I've also played in the November, December ones as well, but this was the one where I had my best showing. I went 5-1 throughout the Swiss and was the 1 seed going into the top 8. And then in in November I went 4-2, and in December I also went 4-2 throughout the Swiss. As you guys can see, the December one I have pulled up here had 64 players compared to this one, which had 47 players. So the tournaments are getting a little bit bigger. There's some more competition coming in, which is really nice to see, so I'll get the chance to play against some better players, some more players, and things like that. So like I said, for a removal package, we're on some Fatal Push, 1 of Fatal Push here, 2 Dismembers, great, and then Smallpox, which is really nice, because since we're basically playing no creatures, the only creatures that we have are Mutavaults, which if you play the Mutavault, or if you play the Smallpox correctly, then Mutavault isn't a creature at the time when you when you cast your Smallpox, and then you won't have to sacrifice the Mutavault to the Smallpox. And then in the sideboard, we have 2 copies of Gurmag Angler over here, which could kind of get a little bit awkward with the Smallpoxes, but I've actually decided against Gurmag Anglers right now. I didn't top 8 the one in December, so I can't compare it directly to my list in December, but I actually took out the Gurmag Anglers, and I've been experimenting with the card Waste Knot, which has been really, really sweet and has been putting up some good results for me as well. Every time I slam a Waste Knot, it seems like it's like it just wins me the game. I basically storm off. My opponent starts discarding their lands because they don't want to discard their good spells, which means they're giving me mana, and because they're giving me mana, then I can cast more of my spells. We'll be able to cast things like Wrench Mind when I shouldn't be able to cast things like Wrench Mind, and then that just kind of snowballs, and it does things like that. So, along with the removal package, like I said, we had Smallpox. We also have 4 Liliana of the Veil, which is the most expensive card in the deck, as you guys can see here. Card Kingdom is currently selling them for $90. TCG Player just under $90, $85.29. So Liliana of the Veil, though, is a very, very important key piece because she does everything that this deck wants. She makes our opponent discard cards, which is fantastic because then our Shrieking Afflictions and our Racks will be able to continuously deal damage. And then Liliana of the Veil also can -2 to make target player sacrifice a creature, which, like we said, just additional removal spells are always nice. We'll be able to do things like take our opponent's second creature so that they can definitely only play 1 creature, and then Liliana can just come down, get rid of that creature, and then from there she just starts ticking up, making our opponent discard cards. I believe the last card that I have to, or I guess Funeral Charm is another one. There's 2 cards I haven't talked about yet, Funeral Charm being one of them. So Funeral Charm has 3 modes. Target player discards a card, target creature gets +2/-1 until end of turn, or target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn. In order of importance on this card is definitely target player discards a card being the most important. Funeral Charm is the only instant speed discard spell in our deck, so being able to do things like have our opponent draw their card for turn and then still in their draw step, cast Funeral Charm and make them discard the card before they get the opportunity to play a sorcery or a creature. If they want to hold the land, that's likely, but this can make them discard that as well in their draw step, which doesn't feel great, but it always does feel good when your opponent like draws their Tarmogoyf for turn and you know that you can't answer that Tarmogoyf, so in your draw step you make them discard that Tarmogoyf. It's always nice. Then second most important, target creature gets +2/-1. There are a surprising amount of X1s in Modern. It kills things like Unflipped Delvers on turn 1, kills things like Young Pyromancer, kills Lingering Souls tokens, kills Dark Confidant, kills a lot of great cards, and it can be nice that just sometimes this will act as an additional removal spell instead of acting as a discard spell. If we already have like a bunch of Inquisitions and Thoughtseizes in our hand, then it might be better for us just to have this as a removal spell than as a discard spell. And then in the last, the least important is target creature gains Swamp Walk until end of turn. This very rarely comes up in our deck. However, we do have Mutavaults and we do have an Urborg. Urborg makes each land a swamp in addition to its other type, so even our opponent's lands then become swamps, which means when we play Funeral Charm, we can give our Mutavault the ability to have Swamp Walk to possibly swing in for lethal for the last 2 points of damage. Very, 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 very rarely comes up. Most of the time we'll just be using it to discard or kill an X1. And then finally, the last card that we have in the main deck here is Ensnaring Bridge. As you guys can see, I'm also playing one on the sideboard. Ensnaring Bridge. Creatures with power greater than the number of cards in your hand can attack. Since we're making our opponent discard a bunch of cards, we're also running low on cards in our hand. So this is just a nice way to say, hey, here's this artifact that you most likely cannot deal with. and no damage will be dealt to me. Meanwhile, we're still being able to kill our opponent because we don't require creatures to kill our opponent. We require Shrieking Affliction and the Rack, so we can just kind of sit behind this Ensnaring Bridge for as long as we need to and just continuously deal damage using our 8 Rack effects. In the sideboard now, we have 1 Damnation. Really good against the creature matchups, as well as Fatal Push, also really good against the creature matchups. Here we have Duress. Duress is very good against control matchups. We normally have a pretty good matchup against the control matchups. However, Duress still helps us out a lot. It's also very good against things like Tron. If you're on the play, you can Duress to take their Expedition map, you can take their Karn, you can take their Ugin, you can take whatever. So Duress is pretty good against Tron as well. Like I said, another copy of Ensnaring Bridge for the creature matchups, things like Merfolk and other like aggro matchups. The only aggro matchup where Ensnaring Bridge is bad is against Burn, because they're also kind of doing a similar plan to ours, where they don't necessarily require the creatures in order to be able to kill us. They can just point burn spells at our face. Gurmag Anglers, which were just kind of there as a big creature. Most of the time after our opponents have sideboarded game 1, they know that we're not going to have a lot of creatures in our deck, so they'll board out some of the removal, and they most likely won't have an answer to the Gurmag Angler. They might leave in something like Fatal Push, because they know it kills Mutavault, Mutavault being our only creature in the main deck, so Fatal Push obviously does not kill a Gurmag Angler, meaning that the Gurmag Angler can usually stick, and it does get chump blocked a lot. However, it also trades with opposing Gurmag Anglers, which is very nice for us. 2 Liliana the Last Hope. This was also very good against control matchups. It's very good against other matchups where there's a lot of X1s, decks that are playing things like Lingering Souls, things that are basically playing any of the X1s that I named before. Liliana the Last Hope is very good against that. It was also one of our only win conditions against Leyline of Sanctity. Leyline of Sanctity being a card that can give our opponents hexproof. And obviously if you have hexproof, we cannot target our opponent with our discard spells. So Liliana the Last Hope coming down with the ultimate sometimes can win you the game through a white ley line, as well as Gurmag Angler can win you the game through a white ley line as well. Then we have Nihil Spellbomb, just a little bit of graveyard hate. I chose Nihil Spellbomb over Relic of Progenitus just because of the ability to draw a card, continuously wanting to get more discard spells in our hand. That way we can continuously target our opponent, as well as the fact that Nihil Spellbomb only targets our opponent's graveyard. So if we do have, where's that up here, if we do have Raven's Crime in our graveyard, then it can stay in our graveyard and we continuously can retrace it. And if we had Relic of Progenitus, it would get rid of the Raven's Crime. 2 Surgical Extractions will be making our opponent discard a lot, so we can basically pick any card that they discard and just make sure that we don't have to deal with it throughout the rest of the game. This is super sweet when you Smallpox your opponent. Smallpox, of course, being each player loses 1 life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, then sacrifices a land. The best feeling in the world is when you're playing against a Tron player and they sacrifice one of their Tron pieces that they don't have another copy of, and then you Surgical Extraction their Tron piece. Feels so good. So good. Because you know your opponent has no possible way then of getting Tron, and they're going to be stuck hard casting creatures or planeswalkers, which no Tron player ever wants to spend. Never wants to tap 7 lands in order to be able to cast their, their Karn. And then finally we have 1 Vampiric Link. This was a little bit of a hedge that I had against Burn. I wanted to make sure that I was expecting a lot more Burn than actually ended up showing up to this event. So Vampiric Link does a lot, especially if you put it on Eidolon of the Great Revel. Because Eidolon of the Great Revel, whenever it triggers, the Eidolon is the one dealing the damage, so you can basically negate the damage being dealt to you once you put Vampiric Link on Eidolon of the Great Revel. And then your opponent basically has to waste a burn spell on their own Eidolon of the Great Revel if you Vampiric Link it, because you're just perfectly fine with it, meanwhile the Eidolon is damaging them. So in the Swiss portion, like I said, I went 5-1. My only loss came against this Boggles player right here. This is his list, as you guys can see. Normally, it's a pretty good matchup against Boggles because we have all the sacrifice effects with Liliana of the Veil and Smallpox. However, as you guys can see, 3 Leyline of Sanctity in the sideboard from my opponent, as well as 3 Seal of Primordium, which were both very, very good against me. And so he was the only person I lost to in the Swiss. Like I said, it was 5-1 after the Swiss portion. And my opponent in the top 8 was this man right here, who was on a Jeskai control list. Why is there an advertisement? Actually, you guys might not have even been able to see the advertisement because it's over here underneath the black bar and my webcam, so I don't know why I said that. Alright, anyway, my opponent was able to play PN Kieran Nalaar. Going wide against 8-rack is a very, very good way of beating 8-rack. We have a lot of 1-for-1 spells, and so making 3 creatures with just 1 spell from PN Kieran Nalaar was very, very good for my opponent. And then just basically grinded me out of the game with a Lightning Helix. Lightning Helix basically negating an entire turn worth of a rack, and then that's basically just how the game went. We went back and forth. Spell Queller did a lot of work for him as well. I wasn't able to draw into some of my removal spells that I needed for the Spell Queller, and eventually I had my opponent down to where he was dead next turn, and I eventually ended up dying to, if I can recall correctly, it was either Lightning Helix or Lightning Bolt off the top, along with 4 damage from PN Kieran Nalaar, as well as a PN Kieran Nalaar activation, for a total of 9 damage in 1 turn when I had my opponent dead in game 3 on the very next turn. So it was very good games against my opponent, and I'm very happy with my performance at this event. I didn't play anyone else in the top 8 throughout the Swiss portion, I believe. Yeah, I did not play anyone else. However, I still feel like that's pretty good. I ended up coming in 5th through 8th here in this event, with my only losses coming to the player who finished in 1st and the player who finished in 2nd, which I feel is pretty sweet. So once again, I will show you the list right here. 23 land, 24 instant and sorceries, 13 other, and then our 15 card sideboard. So I've made a few changes to it. I've done things like putting in additional fatal pushes if I'm expecting more aggressive matchups. I have removed the Vampiric Link because I haven't been playing against a lot of burn players. And then also got rid of the Gurmag Anglers and started experimenting with Waste Knots as well. So yeah, this has been the deck. This is the story of how I almost won a MOX. I was so close back in October. My only losses again coming to the player who finished in 1st and the player who finished in 2nd, so not a bad performance on my part at all, especially after going 5-1 throughout the Swiss and claiming the 1 seed going into the top 8. So yeah, this has been the video. Hopefully you guys did enjoy it. If you guys enjoyed the face cam, then go ahead and tell me down below if you guys did enjoy the face cam, and I'll be sure to do more face cam videos in the future. And I believe that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.